tested positive for the parasite, but later withdrew that result, saying it was a false positive. Despite that reversal, and although there is currently no evidence confirming contamination, Mexico decided to continue with its own investigation. Mexico's Health Secretary, David Kersenovich, also confirmed 3 cases of cyclosporasis in Mexico, but said authorities have ruled out an outbreak in the country. So far, officials have not linked those cases to the lettuce involved in the U.S. investigation. Here's how Kersenovich explained Mexico's response.
A sample was taken that tested positive, but the FDA later determined it was a false positive. Therefore, we currently have no evidence. However, we have traveled to Guanajuato and collected samples to conduct our own investigation in coordination with the U.S. CDC.
The lettuce was traced to Taylor Farms in Mexico, which voluntarily removed iceberg lettuce from central Mexico from the U.S. market. And the case is significant for Mexico because the U.S. is its largest agricultural export market. No broader restrictions on Mexican produce have been announced, but Mexican authorities, of course, want to determine whether contamination occurred at the source and prevent investigation from affecting another producers and exports. Valeria Leon, CNN, Mexico City.
Now, staying on the topic, the outbreak has also led to a more than 30% drop in foot traffic at Taco Bell stores since July 17th. That is when federal health officials identified the fast food chain as part of its investigation. So the company is pulling out all the stops to win back customers, including $1 lettuce-free deals. The products are available as part of the deal, and their enchiladas and fries are also part of that. Seattle's most famous raccoon could be sitting on your desk by Christmas. The National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum just unveiled this officially licensed limited edition figurine of Jimothy. It is $30. Jimothy went viral after people started catching him on video with his weird little round body running around Seattle. Weird to us, normal to Jimothy. Straight ahead on CNN Headline Express, Elon Musk saying that his AI tool can do a better job of making the Odyssey movie than a Hollywood director? Well, we've got the details on his planned project. Plus, here's one way to stay cool with brutal heat waves across the globe. If you worked in fast food or any type of food and beverage service before, you've known this. It's a human fridge. Except it's not supposed to be a human fridge in those workplace capacities. We'll break it down on the other side.
गोडाउन फुल है, पर कौन सा स्टॉक कितना है क्लियर नहीं। टैली प्राइम 750 रुपीस पर मंथ में इन्वेंट्री का क्लियर कंट्रोल देता है। सेल्स बिलिंग और इनवॉइसिंग से स्टॉक रिकॉर्ड्स ऑटोमेटिकली कनेक्टेड रहते हैं। परचेस डिटेल्स और स्टॉक अवेलेबिलिटी के साथ प्लानिंग बेटर होती है। टैली प्राइम से अकाउंटिंग और जीएसटी डेटा ऑर्गेनाइज्ड रहता है। बिजनेस को बेटर मैनेज करिए। बाय टैली प्राइम नाउ। बिजनेस को बेटर मैनेज करिए। बाय टैली प्राइम नाउ।
Don't kill the messenger here, kids. Start of the new school year is around the corner. Families are already shopping for supplies, but some items on the kids' list and the students' list may be much more expensive this year. CNN's Jen Sullivan looks at how much families are expected to spend and also some ways that you can save.
Shoppers plan to spend just over $863 on back-to-school supplies for students in kindergarten through 12th grade this year. That's about $5 more than last year, according to a new survey from the National Retail Federation. People will spend the most on electronics, about $293, clothing, $250, shoes, $174, and school supplies, about $146. But college students can expect to spend even more. Shoppers plan to spend an average of $1,400 on back-to-school items for college. That's $111 more than last year.
If we look at computers, we know that chip prices are incredibly high, and that's pushing some of the cost of computers, and that is a big ticket item.
Many top manufacturers offer payment plans for computers, and some even offer student discounts between 5 to 10%. That can help you budget and save. And many big retailers have already started rolling out sales and discounts on back-to-school supplies.
Okay, we've got another warning about food to tell you about. This time, it is soup that could go bad. Maribel Aber joins us from the NASDAQ market site with that and the rest of your Top Money Express headlines. Maribel, what do people need to know before lunch?
Okay, Brad, Amy's Kitchen is recalling more than 180,000 cans of soup because a defect could allow the contents to spoil. An FDA notice says batches of the brand's organic lentil soup light sodium were affected. The cans were sold in more than 20 states and parts of Canada. Customers can return the cans for a refund and find full details on the FDA's website. Samsung has launched its newest foldable smartphones ahead of Apple's expected debut in the space. The Galaxy Z Fold 8. It opens like a book, while the Flip 8 has a traditional flip-up design. Both are about $100 more than previous models, starting at $1,199. A new version for the Fold 8 Ultra starts at $2,099 with a larger display, upgraded camera, and bigger battery. Samsung says higher component costs, especially for memory chips, are driving the price increases. Apple's first foldable iPhone is expected later this year. Okay, McDonald's is bringing honey brown butter biscuits to its breakfast menu. 2 new sandwiches, bacon, egg, and cheese, and crispy chicken are available in select markets for a limited time. Customers can also add that honey brown butter biscuit to any breakfast sandwich. Availability varies by restaurant, so check the McDonald's app to see what your local store offers. So Brad, what's the GOAT of Mickey D breakfast sandwiches in your opinion? Because for me, I like to keep it simple. A sausage biscuit with a side of hash browns, nothing more, nothing less.
If it doesn't combine all the meals that I want in one, then it's not the one for me. It's not the GOAT, so it must be the McGriddle with a hash brown on the side, Maribel. That's what I'm going for. That is the GOAT. We got it there on screen. Man, I'm hungry now. Maribel Aber, thank you so much. Let's take a look at some other stories making headlines across the country. We start in Ohio. A heart-stopping video of a police officer rescuing a 13-year-old girl from a burning home. Watch this.
Where they at? Right here. Come on. I got you. Come on.
You can see the officer rush to the house and pull the girl from the home, and she couldn't move and was drifting in and out of consciousness at the time. Firefighters arrived shortly after and rescued a second person from the burning house. No word on what caused the blaze. And sparks fly as authorities say a semi-truck sent a telephone pole flying into a New Jersey street. Yikes! That truck, hauling a forklift, knocked down multiple power lines Wednesday and ripped that telephone pole from the ground. Now, thankfully, no one was hurt. Let's take you out to West Virginia. That's where a car was swallowed up by a sinkhole after this week's heavy rains washed over the state. Just remarkable here. Officials say that no one was hurt, thankfully, and point to a busted culvert as the likely cause. And a wild scene in Santa Jose, California, with a group of wild pigs running amok at a business park. Employees say they've done a significant amount of damage while tearing up grass, searching for grub and insects to eat. The pigs have been a recurring issue in this city. They look cute. And in Arkansas, one neighborhood has its very own Spider-Man. A traffic camera shows a person in a Spider-Man costume hop out and help a person in a wheelchair across a busy intersection. Then, Spider-Man swiftly rushes back to his car. The manager of a local trampoline park actually commented on the video, saying this was an employee of theirs who had just left a superhero-themed day at work. Excellent work there. I'm Brad Smith. The news continues next on CNN Headline Express. know about protests erupt in Wisconsin after a deadly officer-involved shooting, what we know about the ongoing investigation. And the Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee asked the Justice Department to consider prosecuting Jack Smith, the special counsel who previously prosecuted Donald Trump. We've got the DOJ's response for you. Plus,
understand, he's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play.
initial findings from an independent autopsy provide few clues about what actually caused Nolan Wells' death. So what's next in the investigation? And take a look at this. A semi-truck rips down these power lines, sending sparks flying through the air. We've got that story for you later this morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brad Smith. This is CNN Headline Express. Glad that you're with us today. Let's get this started. We begin this hour in Wisconsin, where a deadly officer-involved shooting has sparked an investigation and protests. The man in his 30s was shot and killed in a struggle with Madison police officers Wednesday. Peaceful protesters gathered at the scene during the day before a vigil formed in the evening. Madison's mayor says that the state will be conducting an independent probe, and here is what we know so far.
Holy A man was shot and killed in a struggle with police officers in Madison, Wisconsin, after officials say he pulled out a knife and injured an officer.
This was clearly a dangerous situation, and I'm grateful there were not, some more serious injuries inflicted to those officers. But I again convey my sympathies sincerely to this family.
Police say the man fled on a bike when they arrived to investigate reports of someone allegedly checking parked vehicles. Officers caught up with the man, and that's when authorities say a physical struggle ensued, leading to the man using a knife to injure an officer during the attempted arrest.
One of the officers then draws a taser, yells, "Taser, taser, taser," tasers him. He falls to the ground, and the three continue to struggle for a second or two. And then one of the officers stands and just a couple feet above his head shoots him 3 times in the head.
Chief Patterson confirmed a taser was deployed, but says it was ineffective. He also said none of the officers involved were wearing body cameras, and all 4 have been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. The confrontation sparked protests at the state capitol over the use of deadly force in the incident.
We're also tracking a major development overnight on Capitol Hill. The Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee is asking the Justice Department to prosecute former special counsel Jack Smith. You may recall that he led the federal prosecutions of Donald Trump, including his response to his election loss in 2020. Current acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was Trump's defense attorney at the time. Now, Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan is alleging that Smith gave misleading testimony before Congress late last year, specifically saying that Smith spied on members of Congress by accessing private phone calls. But he said that he didn't. Speaking to CNN last night, a former prosecutor who worked on January 6 cases calls the criminal referral meritless.
What's being alleged here is perjury. Perjury has 4 elements. You got to have a false statement that's material, that was made under oath, with the deliberate intent to willfully mislead. All right, this is gonna fail on element 1. It's not a false statement. He was asked, Jack Smith, did the toll records you received contain the contents of text messages? He said no.
Jack Smith's counsel argues that Jordan has made no real claim of a lie, and that his work as special counsel didn't breach members of Congress's constitutional protections. A Secret Service agent assigned to the vice president is on administrative leave this morning. This is according to a source, as a second source confirms that officials suspect the agent of leaking information about J.D. Vance's personal travel. The controversy stems from a recent MS Now story about the burden that his trips place on the security team, in particular, a last-minute helicopter flight for Vance's son to attend a golf practice across town, and plans that were later canceled. The source says that an internal review is underway, and CNN has reached out to the Secret Service for comment. We have some new details for you on the war with Iran. The House narrowly passed a $1.1 trillion defense spending bill, despite concerns from Democrats over the massive price tag and the war itself. The bill now heads to the Senate, where its fate is unclear. As for the conflict, CENTCOM says the military has completed a 12th straight night of strikes on Iran, as Donald Trump and Iranian leaders continue to trade threats. Trump is now vowing to destroy Iranian bridges and power plants every time Iran strikes a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, speaking a short time ago in the Philippines, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Iran is begging for a deal and then said this.
I think I saw, guys, I saw Arachi, their foreign minister, who the other day say or something about their policies, an eye for an eye. The president's policy is a head for an eye. I mean, honestly, that's what it's going to be. I mean, they will pay a very heavy price for the things they're doing. They're already paying a very heavy price.
All right, let's turn now to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. That's where 4 of America's fallen heroes returned home. President Trump and top government officials paid their respects yesterday as the dignified transfer of the 4 U.S. service members killed in action in the war with Iran over the weekend took place. And here are their names and faces. 25-year-old Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, who was looking forward to getting married. Sergeant Angel Rampersad was 28 and from New York. And Private Isabella Gonzalez, the youngest at just 19 years old. And 30-year-old Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton. His mom says that his wife and kids were the center of his world. Now off camera during yesterday's solemn ceremony were the families who are bearing this unimaginable loss. While giving a speech in Georgia, President Trump acknowledged the loved ones of Lieutenant Feehan who were at the event.
Oh, it's very tough to watch, to be honest with you. Very tough. I think it's the toughest thing I do. If anything I do all this stuff, but I think it's the toughest thing I do. But to Sherry and Stephen and David, we will carry Tyler's memory in our hearts forever. And I just want to thank you. It's an honor to have you here today. Please.
Trump met privately with the families before the dignified transfer and invited Feehan's family to fly with him on Air Force One to Georgia. The war with Iran is expanding, with Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis claiming to have struck 2 Saudi tankers in the Red Sea. And we're getting our first look at images that appear to show one of the tankers on fire earlier today. These are satellite images from NASA that show a bright red spot. It's, of course, circled there in red for you. That's believed to be the tanker fire. The Houthi rebels say that they hit the tankers because they violated their naval blockade. Meanwhile, the U.S. has signed a deal allowing Saudi Arabia to enrich uranium for civilian energy purposes. But sources say that it does not include international oversight. That is fueling concerns that the kingdom could develop nuclear weapons. News of the deal drawing sharp criticism from some lawmakers in Washington.
This is just terrible, terrible policy. We ought to be going in the other direction. And presumably, that's why Trump was attacking Iran in the first place, was to stop them from being able to develop a nuclear weapon. Now we're going to go on the other hand, go the other side of the Persian Gulf and have Saudi Arabia with the power to enrich uranium. Enriched uranium can be made into a nuclear weapon. This is really, really bad policy.
And there is international reaction as well. The deal has also drawn sharp criticism in Israel. Some of Benjamin Netanyahu's political opponents are treating the deal like a strategic disaster. We now know some of the preliminary findings from the independent autopsy for Nolan Wells. It has been weeks since his body was found after his friends returned from a boat trip without him. The cause of death has not been determined, and his parents and family attorneys say they're committed to finding out what happened to the teen. Randy Kay is breaking down what we know so far.
The only question that we have is what happened to our son.
Nolan Wells' parents were hoping an independent autopsy on their son would bring answers. But so far, there are only more questions.
For the cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells is undetermined pending investigation.
Wells had gone boating with friends on July 4th at Horn Island off the coast of Mississippi. He never returned home. After the initial autopsy ordered by authorities, his body was sent to Washington, D.C. for an independent autopsy requested by the family.
We got the body without his neck at the time of the second autopsy.
The family's attorney, Benjamin Crump, said the findings were limited because Wells' body was not intact.
The throat was not received with the body. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributing a contributor or a cause of death.
According to Crump, many of Wells' organs were missing, having been removed for the first autopsy, which the pathologist says is common forensic pathology practice. Because of this, they couldn't examine his stomach contents or even his lungs.
The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and the lungs for water.
Crump said the pathologist noticed red discoloration on the back of Wells' head, which concerned him. Another medical examiner not affiliated with this case told CNN that could represent decompositional changes of the musculature, or it could be from blunt force injury to the back of the head and neck. Still, he could not determine if Wells was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water, or if he might have been forced into the water. His body was found face down near the shoreline 2 days after he disappeared.
For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. He's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play.
We just want honesty. We want to know what happened to our son, because the things that you're telling us, that's not the character of our son.
There are conflicting stories, the family says, about why Wells initially separated from his friends, who returned to shore without him. His mother also believes pictures are missing from her son's phone. Authorities are also investigating a video of an alleged altercation involving Wells, on which attorney Ben Crump says you can hear him arguing about his phone. Though a person did tell CNN that it was his own voice on that recording, not Nolan Wells. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
A view from above of the historic flooding this week in West Virginia, which is under a statewide emergency. Officials there already performed dozens of water rescues, with some areas still hard to reach. And we're also tracking Bertha as it fades in the Gulf and heads west. The bulk of the heavy rain is staying well offshore, though risks from coastal flooding and rough surf continue today. The storm's moisture plume, though, that is having impacts nearly 1,000 miles away. CNN's Chris Warren has that, plus the rest of your forecast.
Watching a few trouble spots here on Thursday, with some scattered showers and even some thunderstorms possible across the middle of the country, but it's right here where things could turn dangerous. Now, the moisture from Bertha, as it moves into Texas, there's a little bit more going on than that. You can see the flow of the overall weather pattern is going to bring some of that moisture to interact with this front, and that front is going to be the weather maker over the next couple of days. And by that, the kind of weather is going to be showers, thunderstorms, and at times some heavy rain. So flooding is going to be a possibility in these areas. Future radar shows us that from Alabama, Georgia, and into the Carolinas through at least Friday morning. The potential is there for possibly seeing some flooding. The heaviest rainfall and the highest rainfall totals across South Carolina and North Carolina, but any of these little individual spots could eventually produce some flooding. So that's going to be worth watching. Daytime highs are going to be up there throughout the South. So the temperatures, the warmer they get here in the South, the more moisture that can be contained in the atmosphere. So we're going to have very hot and humid conditions in the Southeast. Still the dry heat, though, in the deserts, but here is where it's going to be hot and humid and dangerously hot. In fact, into Texas, we are looking at the purple right here. Extreme heat is on the way for parts of West Texas. And then when you go outside, factor in the humidity, what it's going to feel like. Many locations here, from New Orleans to Oklahoma City, it is going to feel right through the weekend like it is well into the triple digits.
All right, thank you, Chris. Lots more to come on CNN Headline Express, including the details on how Olive Garden just got dragged into a conversation about voter ID. Yes, you heard that correct. Plus, a new poll looking ahead to 2028 has Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez surging to the top of the list for Democrats. What she has to say about a possible presidential run. Plus, Joy Behar raising some eyebrows after she pulled in one of her guests on The View for a long kiss on the lips. We will show you the moment and his reaction. Trump's Attorney General pick, Todd Blanche, is facing roadblocks from 2 Republicans for his confirmation. Senators Tom Tillis and John Cornyn being urged by 24 Jeffrey Epstein survivors to vote against Blanche's confirmation. Now, Blanche met with survivors last week, and he described the meeting as productive. This comes as Senate Democrats hosted a forum yesterday spotlighting what they call the Justice Department's abandonment of the rule of law and its failure to deliver justice for Epstein survivors. President Trump has filed an emergency injunction to get the $5.6 million that he paid E. Jean Carroll back. The money was awarded by a federal jury, which found Trump liable for sexually abusing Carroll in the 1990s. Now, earlier this month, the judge ordered the money be released to Carroll after the money had sat in a court-controlled escrow account since the verdict 3 years ago. Carroll's attorneys opposed the injunction and accused Trump of delaying the payment. New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is leading the Democratic primary field in a new 2028 presidential poll. AOC surging to the top of the poll out of New Hampshire, ahead of names like Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. It found that 22% of voters in the state say AOC would have their vote, with former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg a close second with 21%. AOC responding to the news saying this.
One is that, polls are polls and a horse race is a horse race. I am, of course, I think very deeply humbled and grateful to, folks who participate and convey that confidence.
Ocasio-Cortez has seen a jump in support since February, according to the poll, while Buttigieg's status has remained relatively the same. Senator Mark Kelly, California Governor Gavin Newsom, and Senator Bernie Sanders, they round out the top 5 Democratic contenders. Well, new details this morning about a new cyber attack that was carried out by artificial intelligence. ChatGPT's parent company, OpenAI, is calling the hack an unprecedented cyber incident. According to a statement from OpenAI, some of its experimental models escaped the test environment and it hacked into another company's servers. It is one of the first incidents of this type, and it follows repeated warnings from experts. CNN's Haras Gold explains what went wrong.
This model was given a cybersecurity test and on its own figured out a way to hack OpenAI's own systems of this sandbox and get access to the open internet, which it was not supposed to have. Then it decided on its own that the most likely place that would have the answer to the cybersecurity test was a place known as Hugging Face. Hugging Face is a very popular repository for open source AI models and data sets. And then the system went on to hack into Hugging Face's own systems in order to try and get the answer to this test.
Both companies say that they are now working together to solve the security flaws the model exploited. OpenAI says the company is responding accordingly. Pasta and politics seem to be on a collision course on the same table here, if you will. It comes as Republican and White House officials are using an Olive Garden promo to defend their controversial voter ID law.
First round, get your go-to. Second, have what she's having.
An Olive Garden diner asks online if his whole family can share his never-ending pasta pass, which is good for months. The restaurant chain says no, it's only for use by the pass holder, who must present a valid photo ID. And that prompts White House advisor Stephen Miller to serve up some piping hot politics.
We've reached a point in society where access to fettuccine at Olive Garden is vastly more secure than deciding who is commander-in-chief of the country.
Some Republicans have bellied up to that table fast, asking their fellow lawmakers to pass the Save America Act, please.
We're protecting our breadsticks more than our ballots in jurisdictions across this country.
They've been pushing the measure for months to put strict new ID requirements on anyone trying to vote.
The only reason you can be against that is if you want voter fraud.
It's a main course for President Donald Trump, who implied he simply overpowered election fraud when he won in 2016.
Folks, the system is rigged.
That he was cheated when he lost in 2020.
It was a rigged election.
And even now, back in office, he relentlessly claims corruption is common when Americans go to the polls.
This cannot be allowed to continue.
The fly in the sauce? It's not true. Courts, election experts, and researchers have found time and again that voter fraud at any level is exceedingly rare and almost never decides the outcome of any election. Still, the GOP keeps dishing distrust on the issue.
Olive Garden takes pasta pass security more seriously than Democrats are taking election security.
Even as many Democrats say, the Save America Act could discourage legal voters by stoking fears and raising onerous requirements, such as proving citizenship or making a married woman prove she changed her name long ago, not for pasta, but for a constitutional right. Of course, we reached out to Olive Garden to see if the company had any comment. Nothing yet. This legislation has made it through the U.S. House, but it has stalled in the Senate where it doesn't seem to have the votes. But the Republicans are still cooking on it. Tom Foreman, CNN, Washington.
All right, well, we're not tip shaming here, but is 20% still a good tip? Maribel Aber breaks down a new study that finds diners are being more discerning with their hard-earned cash.
Hey, Maribel Aber here at the NASDAQ market site. You know, for many consumers, tipping fatigue is real, and technology can turn nearly every transaction into a math problem. So what are people tipping these days? Restaurant technology company Toast tracked credit card and digital payments at roughly 171,000 tip-enabled restaurants on its platform in the first quarter. Cash tips were not included. The average tip across all transactions was 18.8%, but it varied depending on the type of restaurant. At full-service, sit-down restaurants, the average tip was 19.3%. At counter service or fast food restaurants, it was 15.8%. For takeout, the average dropped to 13.7%. The study did not establish a hard and fast rule, but Toast users still tend to tip about 18% to 20% when dining at a full-service restaurant. For other types of service, customers appear to adjust accordingly. One final takeaway: gratuities, service charges, and other fees may already be added automatically. So check your bill before you pay. Your money matters.
Well, it was a mixed day at the ballpark on Wednesday if you're a Boston Red Sox fan. CNN's Coy Wire joins me now. No more Philadelphia Phillies shaming, at least for today.
Hey, I like your outfit today. You look very dapper.
I was trying to twin with you.
Hey, those Red Sox 15th straight win, matching the franchise record set 80 years ago, wasting zero time. First inning, 4 of the first 5 batters reached base, and Caleb Durbin cashed in 2 of them. And then, in the 9th inning, came the moment the fans were waiting for. The game-ending out and the celebration deserving of its own highlight reel. Boston beat Baltimore 6-3 in the opener of a split doubleheader, tying the win streak record set by Ted Williams' 1946 squad. They reached the World Series that season. Boston lost Game 2 of this doubleheader 5-1, but we'll just call that a scheduling glitch. All right, tough day at the office for Richie Palacios. His Rays facing the Blue Jays, and Palacios gets bonked on the head with his own foul ball after it ricocheted off the net behind him. And then, same at bat, Palacios thinks that maybe I'll erase the pain with a home run. But Nathan Lucas said, not today, my friend. A highlight reel robbery. Good news, Palacios and the Rays still smiling with a win 4-2. To the WNBA, where Caitlin Clark stays hotter than asphalt in July. Coming off a 45-point performance on Friday, she hit 5 3-pointers by halftime of this game, scoring 21 of the Fever's halftime franchise record 70. She finished with 27 points, 11 assists, and another Fever win, 123-88 over Connecticut. Now to a story ripe for celebration. Fans in Spain's tomato-growing province of Sevilla honored World Cup champs Fabian Ruiz and Gavi in the most local way possible, gifting each of the hometown heroes their body weight in tomatoes. Ruiz hauled home about 187 pounds, Gavi around 151. They will also have the grass soccer fields in the area renamed after them. I think something tells me it's going to be a lot of pasta, a lot of gazpacho before the next World Cup. That's a lot of tomatoes.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that they don't have to want for anything in the near term in Spain. The second they're just like, oh yeah, I was on that World Cup winning team, obviously it's just like, oh, get him what he needs. We'll cover it. Just bring it out. But this is a pretty good one. Coy Wire, appreciate it.
You got it.
Still to come on CNN Headline Express, the rescheduled White House Correspondents' Dinner is set to take place tomorrow. A look at the ramped-up security in the new location. Plus, the Cyclospore outbreak is hitting Taco Bell hard. The new $1 deals that they're offering to get customers back in their stores. We've got those details for you. Terrifying moments caught on video when a leopard attacked a shopkeeper in India. Wow. All right, we've got their story coming your way, too. You got Bob. It is 1:30. Let's hit the refresh button on our top stories here. Beginning in Wisconsin, that's where a deadly officer-involved shooting took place. It's sparking an investigation and protests. A Madison police officer shot and killed a man in his 30s Wednesday afternoon after responding to reports that someone was checking parked cars. Police say that the man pulled a knife and wounded an officer. Those involved have been placed on administrative leave as the state is investigating. And former special counsel Jack Smith should be prosecuted by the Justice Department, according to the Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Jim Jordan is alleging Smith, who prosecuted Donald Trump, gave misleading testimony late last year. Here's CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig with more in the breakdown.
You cannot make a perjury case based on half-truths. In order to make a perjury case, you have to show a specific, clear question and a specific, clear, intentional false answer. Somebody could look at Jack Smith's testimony and say, okay, he wasn't being forthcoming. When Grassley asked him, had you seen the text messages in this one batch of records, the really fully honest answer from Jack Smith would have been, no, I didn't see text messages in that one batch, but I did see them elsewhere. But that's not required. You don't have to give information beyond what you're asked. So if there was a critique of Jack Smith that he wasn't fully forthcoming, that's valid, but that's different from saying he committed a criminal act of felony perjury.
Thank you, Ellie. Smith's lawyers say Jordan has made no real claim of a lie. And in the Middle East, the U.S. military says it completed a 12th straight night of strikes on Iran. Meanwhile, President Trump and Iranian leaders, they continue to trade threats. Trump now vowing to destroy Iranian bridges and power plants every time Iran strikes a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says its policy is an eye for an eye. But speaking a short time ago in the Philippines, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Trump's policy is now a head for an eye.
Iran is begging us. Okay, both directly and indirectly. Let's do a deal. Let's talk. Iran is begging every day. The problem with Iran is every time they make a deal, the people that are in charge there, they either break it or they want to change it. So it looks like they're not ready to make a deal. So they're going to continue to pay a price. And every night the price gets higher and higher and higher. And that's what's happening now.
The war is also expanding to the Red Sea, where Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis are claiming to have struck 2 Saudi tankers. We're getting our first look at images that appear to show one of the ships on fire earlier today, circled in red there for you on your screen. We have new details now on this developing story, as a Secret Service agent has been put on leave suspected of disclosing details of the vice president's personal travel. CNN's Betsy Klein is at the White House with more.
Last week, there were some really fascinating reporting from our colleagues at MS Now about tensions amongst Vice President J.D. Vance's U.S. Secret Service detail. And that included frustrations from these agents assigned to the vice president about this burden of demands for personal travel for both the vice president and members of his family. Notably, that included a planned trip aboard Marine 2 to Joint Base Andrews for the vice president's young son. And this report raised alarms among the FBI, the White House, and Secret Service officials for that level of operational detail that was being described in the press. Now, we are learning, according to CNN reporting, that a U.S. Secret Service agent on Vance's detail has been placed on administrative leave after being suspected of disclosing information for that story. The U.S. Secret Service internally is conducting that review. It's not clear at this time if there could be administrative punishment or potentially criminal charges here. But this story was remarkable because one of the hallmarks of the Secret Service is their discretion. It is extremely rare and unusual for Secret Service officials to speak even on background, not on the record, with these kinds of specific details about a protectee. And it also speaks to something that I have been reporting on for years, which is this morale crisis within this agency. This is a high-stress, high-intensity workplace with management and logistical issues, all exacerbated by an unprecedented threat environment and really a lot of stress and strain on agents and burnout. But this just marks the latest development in a much broader crackdown by the Trump administration on what it views as unauthorized leaks to the press. Just weeks ago, 4 New York Times reporters were served subpoenas to testify before a federal grand jury after their reporting on security concerns around the president's new Qatari-gifted Air Force One.
Thank you, Betsy. It may soon be a little harder for U.S. lawmakers to buy and sell stocks. The House narrowly passed a bill yesterday that would prevent sitting Congress members and their spouses and their dependent children from buying new stocks of publicly traded companies. Now, they can still buy private shares, but those sales would require up to 14 days advance notice. Lawmakers and their families would be charged a fee if they violate the rule. It's unclear when or if the bill will be taken up in the Senate. Hundreds of National Guard members have been deployed in West Virginia. That's where the immediate storm threat has passed. But now the real work begins to clean up after historic flooding this week. The governor says officials are focused on search and rescue efforts while victims face the mess left behind by high waters.
We started to receive water from both our garage side and the wall that we share with an abandoned adjacent building. We had completely cleaned up last night, mopped, got rid of all the water damage, and we came in today to more water damage, a little worse than last night.
Officials say that they still don't know the full extent of the damage, with washed out roads cutting off access to some areas. The severe storms also produced multiple tornadoes and damaging winds in Kentucky, Ohio, and New Jersey. The problem in the southwest U.S. is actually not enough water. The combined levels in Lake Powell and Lake Mead have fallen to historic lows, and experts say that this is a critical moment in the Colorado River crisis. Those lakes are 2 of the biggest reservoirs in the country. They provide water to tens of millions of people and irrigate millions of acres of farmland. Well, the rescheduled White House Correspondents' Dinner is set for tomorrow. The president is expected to attend, and the Secret Service says it's heightening security measures. The dinner in April was shut down after a gunman rushed through a security checkpoint and opened fire at the event. Suspect Cole Allen pleaded not guilty to attempting to assassinate the president and remains in custody. A trial has yet to be set, but the head of the Secret Service says political tensions have escalated since then, putting security on high alert.
We are in a heightened level of a threat environment right now. It's no secret. There are things happening around the globe that are always going to impact how we move, and that's how we evaluate what our security plan is going to be. We do base that off of what's happening, but we're always going to look at the threat environment and where we're going, and just what's happening at the moment. That does fold into the security plan.
Friday's dinner will be held at the Waldorf Astoria, not the Washington Hilton as it was before. Well, Mexico is conducting its own investigation into the lettuce believed to be the source of a cyclospore outbreak in the U.S. The CDC has confirmed more than 4,000 cases, and another 7,400 suspected cases are undergoing additional lab testing. Now, the lettuce is believed to be linked to the outbreak, and it was grown in central Mexico, as CNN's Valeria Leon reports.
Mexican authorities are conducting their own investigation into the cyclospora outbreak in the United States, after U.S. officials traced the lettuce supplied to a company operating in the central Mexican state of Guanajuato. The FDA initially reported that a lettuce sample had tested positive for the parasite, but later withdrew that result, saying it was a false positive. Despite that reversal, and although there is currently no evidence confirming contamination, Mexico decided to continue with its own investigation. Mexico's Health Secretary, David Kersenovich, also confirmed 3 cases of cyclosporasis in Mexico, but said authorities have ruled out an outbreak in the country. So far, officials have not linked those cases to the lettuce involved in the U.S. investigation. Here's how Kersenovich explained Mexico's response.
A sample was taken that tested positive, but the FDA later determined it was a false positive. Therefore, we currently have no evidence. However, we have traveled to Guanajuato and collected samples to conduct our own investigation in coordination with the U.S. CDC.
The lettuce was traced to Taylor Farms in Mexico, which voluntarily removed iceberg lettuce from central Mexico from the U.S. market. And the case is significant for Mexico because the U.S. is its largest agricultural export market. No broader restrictions on Mexican produce have been announced, but Mexican authorities, of course, want to determine whether contamination occurred at the source and prevent investigation from affecting another producers and exports. Valeria Leon, CNN, Mexico City.
Now, staying on the topic, the outbreak has also led to a more than 30% drop in foot traffic at Taco Bell stores since July 17th. That is when federal health officials identified the fast food chain as part of its investigation. So the company is pulling out all the stops to win back customers, including $1 lettuce-free deals. The products are available as part of the deal, and their enchiladas and fries are also part of that. Seattle's most famous raccoon could be sitting on your desk by Christmas. The National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum just unveiled this officially licensed limited edition figurine of Jimothy. It is $30. Jimothy went viral after people started catching him on video with his weird little round body running around Seattle. Weird to us, normal to Jimothy. Straight ahead on CNN Headline Express, Elon Musk saying that his AI tool can do a better job of making the Odyssey movie than a Hollywood director? Well, we've got the details on his planned project. Plus, here's one way to stay cool with brutal heat waves across the globe. If you worked in fast food or any type of food and beverage service before, you've known this. It's a human fridge, except it's not supposed to be a human fridge in those workplace capacities. We'll break it down on the other side. The European Union is approving the $110 billion merger of Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery. Regulators say that Paramount made several concessions, including agreeing to abandon a film distribution deal with Universal in Europe. 12 state attorneys general are challenging the buyout, claiming it would stifle competition. Paramount says that the opposite is true. A federal judge has put the deal on hold for now to consider the antitrust lawsuit. Warner is the parent company of CNN. Let's go around the globe here. A Nigerian court took an unusual trip to a methamphetamine lab linked to the country's largest ever drug bust. Prosecutors walked judges through the chemicals and equipment allegedly used to produce meth. Authorities say that the operation uncovered more than 2 tons of meth and chemical materials estimated at $363 million. Parts of France enduring another intense heat wave, fueling more destructive wildfires. Hundreds have been forced to flee their homes in coastal areas near Bordeaux, and officials say that more than hundreds of firefighters have battled this fire. Tragically, 2 firefighters have died in the line of duty. And hundreds of firefighters are also battling in the heat in Spain. The country is suffering from its largest wildfire of the year in central Guadalajara. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says that the country has already seen 4 times as many wildfires than last year. And it was a far cry from a typical day at work for one shopkeeper in northern India who went to his store and ended up fighting off a leopard.
Yes, that's a leopard in a liquor store. And no, it's not meant to be there. It followed the store's salesman Sanjay Gujar into the shop in Rajasthan, northern India, when he went in to clean and do the accounts. CCTV shows the leopard jumping over the counter before attacking him. The owner of the store, Mukesh Gujar, told CNN that Gujar suffered injuries to his face, chest and both shoulders, but that he's now doing well. Mukesh said the salesman ran outside and pulled down the store's shutters, trapping the leopard inside. He said the Forest Department rescue team then came, tranquilized the leopard and took it away.
Wow. All right. Hopefully he's recovering smoothly. That leopard trying to get saucy. And if you're a lover of sea creatures, this newly released video may be a bit hard to watch, but it is a fascinating look into the life of orcas, killer whales. Researchers just released this video showing an orca ramming into a sunfish with enough force to make it explode. This is a previously unknown strategy among killer whales. The scientists believe the body slamming may be a way to feed, or it could be a form of play for the orcas. And a mall in China has found a new way to put robots to work as your badminton partner. The humanoid robot can track shuttlecocks and move into position to return shots in a fast-paced rally. It showcases advances in arm control and real-time perception for robots. Interesting. Well, Japan has found a new way for people to keep cool from what officials are now calling, and this is their terminology, cruelly hot days. It's sending people straight to the refrigerator. CNN international correspondent Hanako Montgomery breaks it down for us.
Oh, it is chilly.
This isn't a fridge for food. It's a fridge for people. Ones who are battling extreme heat as Japan sees another brutal summer.
Please leave me here.
Temperatures in Tokyo have climbed close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit this week, with some parts of the country even hotter.
Japan's weather agency has actually created a new term for days like today that hit above 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, kokushobi, or cruelly hot days.
The company behind the human fridge says it's designed for people who work outside, including construction workers and event staff. And it's also part of Japan's ongoing efforts to reduce heat stroke deaths.
Oh wow, it's getting a bit cold.
And now we take you to Russia. That's where officials say they caught a contraband cat trying to smuggle drugs into a prison. This perpetrator was fitted with 2 homemade collars stuffed with banned substances meant for inmates. A dog sniffed out the stash, and guards removed the collars and let the kitty courier go safe and sound. On Buzz Express today, Chadwick Boseman's brothers are petitioning a Los Angeles court to remove his widow as the administrator of his estate. People magazine reports that the late actor's brothers allege his widow has not properly distributed Boseman's remaining estate assets in the 6 years since his death. He died without a will after a private 4-year battle with colon cancer. And a shocking moment on The View between panelist Joy Behar and Star Trek actor Anson Mount when she planted a kiss on him.
Joy has been talking about you all morning.
You know something? I'm old, but I'm not dead.
We see that. Behar said after that last time Mount was there, he brought her flowers for her birthday and, quote, "It's never been the same between us." Mount reminded Behar that he had gotten married since that last visit as he wiped the smudged lipstick off of his face. Okay, and Elon Musk says that his Grok AI is getting into the movie business and setting its sights on Christopher Nolan's latest blockbuster. Musk posting on X that his platform will make a full-length, quote, historically accurate film of the Odyssey by the end of the year and posted a 3-minute teaser for it. The billionaire has been critical of Nolan's telling of the ancient Greek epic, posting on X earlier this month that Nolan, quote, desecrated Homer, the Odyssey author. It's not keeping film fans away, though. The Odyssey has already raked in over $250 million at the global box office, giving Nolan his biggest opening weekend ever. Next up on CNN Headline Express, Samsung rolling out a new foldable phone. We got a sneak peek of the Galaxy Z. And Spidey to the rescue. A man jumps out of his car to help someone in a wheelchair across the street, and he did it all in a Spidey suit. Quick thinking, quick feet, and eventually got back in that Jeep. We've got the full story coming. Don't kill the messenger here, kids. Start of the new school year is around the corner. Families are already shopping for supplies, but some items on the kids' list and the students' list may be much more expensive this year. CNN's Jen Sullivan looks at how much families are expected to spend and also some ways that you can save.
Shoppers plan to spend just over $863 on back-to-school supplies for students in kindergarten through 12th grade this year. That's about $5 more than last year, according to a new survey from the National Retail Federation. People will spend the most on electronics, about $293, clothing, $250, shoes, $174, and school supplies, about $146. But college students can expect to spend even more. Shoppers plan to spend an average of $1,400 on back-to-school items for college. That's $111 more than last year.
If we look at computers, we know that chip prices are incredibly high, and that's pushing some of the cost of computers, and that is a big ticket item.
Many top manufacturers offer payment plans for computers, and some even offer student discounts between 5 to 10%. That can help you budget and save. And many big retailers have already started rolling out sales and discounts on back-to-school supplies.
Okay, we've got another warning about food to tell you about. This time, it is soup that could go bad. Maribel Aber joins us from the NASDAQ market site with that and the rest of your Top Money Express headlines. Maribel, what do people need to know before lunch?
Okay, Brad, Amy's Kitchen is recalling more than 180,000 cans of soup because a defect could allow the contents to spoil. An FDA notice says batches of the brand's organic lentil soup light sodium were affected. The cans were sold in more than 20 states and parts of Canada. Customers can return the cans for a refund and find full details on the FDA's website. Samsung has launched its newest foldable smartphones ahead of Apple's expected debut in the space. The Galaxy Z Fold 8. It opens like a book, while the Flip 8 has a traditional flip-up design. Both are about $100 more than previous models, starting at $1,199. A new version for the Fold 8 Ultra starts at $2,099 with a larger display, upgraded camera, and bigger battery. Samsung says higher component costs, especially for memory chips, are driving the price increases. Apple's first foldable iPhone is expected later this year. Okay, McDonald's is bringing honey brown butter biscuits to its breakfast menu. 2 new sandwiches, bacon, egg, and cheese, and crispy chicken are available in select markets for a limited time. Customers can also add that honey brown butter biscuit to any breakfast sandwich. Availability varies by restaurant, so check the McDonald's app to see what your local store offers. So Brad, what's the GOAT of Mickey D breakfast sandwiches in your opinion? Because for me, I like to keep it simple. A sausage biscuit with a side of hash browns, nothing more, nothing less.
If it doesn't combine all the meals that I want in one, then it's not the one for me. It's not the GOAT, so it must be the McGriddle with a hash brown on the side, Maribel. That's what I'm going for. That is the GOAT. We got it there on screen. Man, I'm hungry now. Maribel Aber, thank you so much. Let's take a look at some other stories making headlines across the country. We start in Ohio. A heart-stopping video of a police officer rescuing a 13-year-old girl from a burning home. Watch this.
Where they at? Right here. Come on. I got you. Come on.
You can see the officer rush to the house and pull the girl from the home, and she couldn't move and was drifting in and out of consciousness at the time. Firefighters arrived shortly after and rescued a second person from the burning house. No word on what caused the blaze. And sparks fly as authorities say a semi-truck sent a telephone pole flying into a New Jersey street. Yikes, that truck hauling a forklift knocked down multiple power lines Wednesday and ripped that telephone pole from the ground. Now, thankfully, no one was hurt. Let's take you out to West Virginia. That's where a car was swallowed up by a sinkhole after this week's heavy rains washed over the state. Just remarkable here. Officials say that no one was hurt, thankfully, and point to a busted culvert as the likely cause. And a wild scene in Santa Jose, California, with a group of wild pigs running amok at a business park. Employees say they've done a significant amount of damage while tearing up grass, searching for grub and insects to eat. The pigs have been a recurring issue in this city. They look cute. And in Arkansas, one neighborhood has its very own Spider-Man. A traffic camera shows a person in a Spider-Man costume hop out and help a person in a wheelchair across a busy intersection. Then Spider-Man swiftly rushes back to his car. The manager of a local trampoline park actually commented on the video, saying this was an employee of theirs who had just left a superhero-themed day at work. Excellent work there. I'm Brad Smith. The news continues next on CNN Headline Express.
he's got himself in this war of choice where it's almost like he's governing by temper tantrum. And now he's got us involved in potentially another conflict.
I hear so often that.
Wait a minute.
I know there's people that are watching, members of the black community, who are saying, well, how can a teenager not come back with his friends? How can his cell phone and keys return home, but not him?
Federal agents do their job very, very well. So it's important that prosecutors protect them where they can. And that means vindicating their rights if they're victims of assault. But I began to have concerns that agents were not being truthful.
It's not like Iran was quiet and passive before February of this year. We've been interdicting Iranian plots and consistently interdicting them since 1979. To your point, how does this end? And is there a point at which we can open up the strait, even if there's some harassment in the strait? That's sort of the condition that prevails in the Strait of Malacca, prevails around the Horn of Africa, for the last 5 years has prevailed in the Bab el-Mandeb, which we should probably talk about. And those are priced in. Shipping interests and insurers can price that in and reduce the level of threat that are experienced by commercial interests, which is really what's stopping a lot of the traffic in the strait. So the president, to the extent that there is
that wasn't an issue before February 20th, and that wasn't an issue before February 28th in the Strait of Hormuz.
It was.
No, not to this extent, it was not. If it weren't,
with the exception of
it was
87
not.
and 88, which was worse.
Listen, this is all wonderful, but you guys, have you guys met Donald Trump? The guy does not make decisions strategically and doesn't have the temperament to have this conversation where you're going into, how do we go into a military conflict that puts our men and women in uniform in harm's way? What does victory actually look like? What is the reason we're doing this? What is Congress going to say? He doesn't do that. Now he's got himself in this war of choice where it's almost like he's governing by temper tantrum. And now he's got us involved in potentially another conflict.
I hear so often that.
Wait a minute, you have the Houthis going now after what's happening within.
So is the problem that the president doesn't have the patience for this campaign and will slink away at the nearest opportunity?
He doesn't have the intelligence beyond the patience, go ahead.
Or is the problem that he's so headstrong, that he's so aggressive, so hawkish, that he's going to embroil us in a quagmire?
He's delusional. He's delusional, and he's lying to the American people. He's trying to convince himself that there's victory on the horizon, and it's not, and that is a problem.
One thing we can rule out is the slink away scenario.
There's not body camera video. The police chief there says that there's no broad deployment policy for the city of Madison, Wisconsin. It is one of the few larger police departments in the state that does not have a body-worn camera policy broadly for its force. Sarah, this all started when police say that they were responding to a report of a man checking cars. Law enforcement tried to contact this man. He took off on his bicycle through backyards. Police caught up with him later, and a struggle ensued, and that's when police say he pulled out a large fixed blade knife. And you see in the video here this struggle happen. There's an officer who appears to yell, "Taser, taser, taser." It appears she deploys her taser. You know, a half a beat later, maybe a second later, you hear the gunfire. Law enforcement says that one of those officers was injured by that knife. It is the same officer who opened fire. Here's what a bystander said. Meanwhile, police are urging patience.
One of the officers then draws a taser, yells, "Taser, taser, taser," tasers him. He falls to the ground, and the three continue to struggle for a second or two. And then one of the officers stands and just a couple feet above his head shoots him 3 times in the head.
I will say that I'm aware of cell phone video that has been shared and circulated online depicting this incident. I ask the community recognize that there is other video that they have not seen that's not circulating online that will be reviewed as a part of this investigation. So to the extent that they can, as we all navigate this trauma together, we try to remain calm and remember that not all perspectives are online right now.
Police say that a second officer was injured in this incident, but they're not saying how. It's not exactly clear how that second officer was injured.
We do expect Bertha to make landfall at some point today. It's just kind of meandering right here along the Gulf Coast. Sustained winds right around 45 miles per hour, but they are gusting up to about 60 miles per hour. So you do have some of those tropical storm warnings in effect right there throughout the coast. Again, it's going to continue to make that slow meander to the west throughout the day today. The bulk of the heavy rain is well down to the south, but that spin is going to bring some moisture into areas of Louisiana and Texas as we go through the rest of the day today. Now, most of these areas you're talking 1, maybe 2 inches at absolute best in terms of moisture, but it's the added inflow of moisture a little bit farther north, right here to this front. That's where you're going to see Bertha's likely biggest impact, because by adding moisture to this, it's allowing all of these areas of Tennessee and North Carolina to have much more abundant moisture than they would have, frankly, just from the front itself. You can see we've already got some flash flood warnings in effect across portions of North Carolina and even into Texas.
It's a major setback because it just illustrates to what extent this investigation has been so poorly handled by this Justice Department in the United States for decades. The fact that, you know, every day that goes by, every year that goes by, there are important witnesses who now have passed away or are no longer able to, share that information. It makes corroborating information much harder. It makes witnesses much harder. Every single day that goes by sets this investigation back. And I think it makes it that much harder for anyone to have certainty that we will truly ever know the true extent of Epstein's crimes and those that enabled those crimes.
I know part of your reporting is keeping in touch with the survivors. They're heroes, and they're demanding accountability. What does this death mean for them? We heard at least one today express frustration to the point you're trying to make, that he will not face accountability.
It's such a gut punch, I think, because there is always, I think, this ongoing hope that coming forward at great cost, these women have spent so much money on lawyers, received death threats, some of them have gone into hiding, but they have always felt that it was worth it if there could be true accountability. And for something like this to happen, and again to happen without any clear information about what happened and why, I mean, it's just an incredible gut punch.
For these reasons, this pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Understand, he's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play.
We're nowhere near having any definitive answers. I know there's people that are watching, members of the Black community, who are saying, well, how can a teenager not come back with his friends? How can his cell phone and keys return home, but not him? How can hundreds of people who were at this island not see someone drowning? But unfortunately, as far as today's autopsy, we don't have any definitive answers. Like you said, the cause of death, the manner of death, not determined. We're still waiting for the toxicology, for the official report. And of course, we know that that's always the last report to come in. It can take weeks. We saw that, for instance, in the David Celeste Rivas case in Los Angeles. That was the last report. And there was a lot of discussion of why it was taking the medical examiner so long. Now, of course, in this particular case, the fact that you have parts of the throat that were removed, which are not uncommon, even the independent medical examiner said so, it's raising questions. People are asking whether there's some sort of cover-up. And unfortunately, until we get that official report, Laura, I think those questions will remain.
And to be clear, removed during an autopsy, we're told, which means they cannot actually examine them to rule things out. I mean, the autopsy, they also could not examine in the second autopsy, independent autopsy, Nolan's lungs for water, stomach contents as well. Obviously, those are both used to determine whether a body has taken in water or was conscious and breathing when they hit the water. How critical will this part of the autopsy be to the case, not the least of which also would include toxicology reports?
Well, it's absolutely critical because you have an autopsy that was conducted in Mississippi where this death happened, an official autopsy. Then weeks later, you have the body moved all the way to Washington, D.C. for this second autopsy. And the medical examiner has very limited information because body parts were removed. And that they need to make a definitive analysis just isn't there. So as a lawyer, I can tell you, Laura, and you're a former prosecutor, we're nowhere near any type of case, a criminal prosecution for homicide or manslaughter, not even a civil case for wrongful death. We need a medical examiner, an ME, to say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty this was homicide or this was an accidental drowning. And we don't have any of that yet. So as far as this investigation is concerned, we're in its beginning stages, nowhere near the middle or the end.
Look at this gender split. AOC is the choice for the Dem nominee. In October of 2025, look, it was 17% for men, 15% for women. But look at this now. You get a large gender gap, and it is male Democratic voters who are fueling that surge, not female Democratic voters who are fueling that surge. And I think that's something that's rather interesting to me because there's all these questions about females, women running for president being electable, maybe men not saying that they would vote for women candidates. But at least in that primary poll, it suggests the exact opposite.
It's fascinating. Okay, so this is the first time we've seen AOC lead the pack. Again, we haven't had a lot of polls.
We haven't. That's a very close race. It's, very, very tight.
Right. So I don't want to overstate it. But what are you seeing elsewhere?
Yeah, okay. It's one thing if it was just this one New Hampshire poll, but take a look at the prediction markets nationwide, because I think this really gives an indication. Gavin Newsom was very, very hot last year and hot in the beginning of this year. But look at his prediction market odds, the chance to be the Democratic nominee, people putting their money where their mouths are, according to Kalshi. Look at that. Newsom, his support, or the people, his percentage chance of winning has dropped basically in half, from 35% to 18%. AOC has jumped up from 10% to 15%. John Ossoff, a name that we haven't mentioned so far, is also up there right in this sort of pack. But basically what we are seeing right now is this is a wide open Democratic competition, and AOC is very much in the game.
Chaos last December in Minneapolis as Operation Metro Surge got underway.
Quote, somebody is going to get killed. That was the disturbing warning from an agent of the Department of Homeland Security's Investigations Division that sent a chill throughout local officials here in Minnesota, including prosecutors with the U.S. Attorney's Office. The agent was worried about what would happen when Gregory Bavino and his Border Patrol agents got to this city, and the warning was tragically prophetic, as Renee Good was killed on January 7th and Alex Preddy on January 24th. This is the story and the investigation into what was going on behind the scenes between those 18 days.
Somalians ripped off that state for billions of dollars. They contribute nothing. I don't want them in our country, I'll be honest with you.
Those December 2025 comments demonizing Somalis living here in the U.S. legally would set the stage for the launch of Operation Metro Surge. The Trump administration's deployment of 3,000 immigration agents to Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Those are the general orders.
Controversial Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bavina would lead that surge come January. A man already gaining a reputation for his use of aggressive tactics in places like Los Angeles and Chicago, and being accused by a judge of lying under oath.
Beginning in December, the administration had an unprecedented wave of immigration enforcement in the city, in the Twin Cities.
What problems did it cause?
The administrations are empowered to set priorities, and that is traditional and it's appropriate. But Operation Metro Surge was different. From the beginning, it was conducted in a paramilitary posture.
This is Tom Calhoun Lopez, at the time the chief of the Violent and Major Crime Section for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Minnesota. CNN spoke with more than a dozen former and current members of the Trump administration for this story, most of whom refused to go on the record out of fear of retaliation by the Trump administration.
Hundreds of agents were flooding in from out of district. They weren't familiar with Minnesota communities. They weren't familiar with Minnesota residents. And operationally, they were in a paramilitary posture as well. They were heavily armed. They were in masks. They patrolled in combat gear, and their ethos was of a military occupying force. Their mission seemed to be to subdue the state and to bring it to heel.
You know from occupation because you're a veteran.
That's correct. I deployed to Iraq twice, once as a field artillery officer and once as an Army judge advocate.
And it reminded you of that kind of occupation?
It did. Through 2 different deployments, I got to see what a military occupation looked like. And unfortunately, Operation Metro Surge had all the hallmarks of a military occupation.
We don't control the unsafe or questionable tactics by other agencies that are here.
It had become a toxic environment, and it had become a lawless environment. And from that lawlessness came chaos, and from that chaos came the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy and other people being injured.
On the morning of Wednesday, January 7th, a Minneapolis mother named Renee Good dropped her 6-year-old son off at school, then went with her wife Becca to be legal observers of the immigration enforcement operations in their city.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
Oh! What did you think when you first saw the video?
We were getting updates as they happened. We got the video as soon as we can. Obviously, the video speaks for itself. It's troubling.
Immediately following the shooting, senior prosecutors in the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office did what was standard operating procedure. They ordered an investigation into the shooting, whether Renee Good's civil rights had been violated. For a brief moment, it looked like a joint investigation would happen between the FBI and local authorities. But the Trump administration had different plans.
This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism.
In addition to those highly questionable comments from then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, President Trump quickly took to Truth Social and made demonstrably false claims, saying Good was, quote, very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense, adding, it is hard to believe the ICE officer survived.
This is the site where Renee Good died. The investigation was shut down into the shooting.
That's correct. The President and the Secretary of Homeland Security both announced that there would be no investigation. Secretary Noem referred to Renee Good as a domestic terrorist, and I've certainly seen no evidence of that whatsoever.
And had you ever seen anything like that happen before, where the President weighs in on a shooting?
Never. Under normal times, an administration would have no objection to an investigation because the investigation may clear the officer. An investigation isn't necessarily designed to indict anybody.
U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen was in Washington, D.C. at a conference, so the second in command of the U.S. Attorney's Office, Joe Thompson, who was worried that the presence of Homeland Security agents on the street, ICE, Border Patrol, CBP, would inflame matters, made a request to the feds to remove them. That request was honored. Briefly.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
In the U.S. Attorney's Office, staffers grimaced, knowing Mayor Frye's comments weren't going to help. But even before those comments, prosecutors worried about how the Trump administration would handle this shooting. By the end of the day, the FBI was no longer working with local authorities on the shooting investigation, and Homeland Security agents were back on the streets. On Thursday, January 8th, the day after the Renee Good shooting, tensions between the prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota and the Justice Department began. Justice Department officials wanted the prosecutors to claw back a warrant they'd obtained for Renee Good's car, a warrant predicated on an investigation as to whether Renee Good's civil rights were being violated. DOJ officials in D.C. wanted the charges to be against Good for attacking the ICE officer. The Justice Department, led by the Office of Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, also wanted Good, and to a different degree her widow Becca, investigated. But the Minnesota prosecutors would not carry out those actions. On Monday, January 12th, 5 days after the death of Renee Good, Minnesota's U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen returned to the office, and he told prosecutors that the marching orders from D.C. were to investigate Good for an assault on a federal officer, and he also suggested they take some investigative steps regarding Good's widow, Becca, instructions the prosecutors thought were madness.
Does it make sense to investigate somebody for assault on a federal officer if they're dead?
It did not make sense to me at the time. It didn't make sense to any of us. It doesn't make sense to me today.
Also that day, Greg Bovino demanded a phone call with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Bovino was angry that prosecutors had not been filing cases against protesters whom he had claimed and his agents had claimed were assaulting officers and agents.
You assault an officer and you're going to jail.
What Bovino said on the call stunned the prosecutors. Quote, "These people are wackos," Bovino said about Minnesota protesters. "This shit is getting ready to come. We're not going to calm it down. We're going to put it down. We're going to pacify this place. We're going to roll them up." Bovino also made a comment about Rosen, the U.S. attorney, who's an Orthodox Jew, sneeringly referring to him as one of the chosen people, a comment prosecutors found anti-Semitic. After the call with Bovino, one of the prosecutors said, quote, "They're going to kill someone else." Others agreed. On Bovino's claims that immigration officers were being assaulted and charges weren't coming, well, those cases had been going to Tom Calhoun Lopez.
Law enforcement officers have a difficult job, and federal agents do their job very, very well. So it's important that prosecutors protect them where they can. And that means vindicating their rights if they're victims of assault. But I began to have concerns that agents were not being truthful, making arrests with very little provocation, and then soon enough, no provocation. And even after that, I would learn that agents had instigated physical contact, and so they were arresting people not only who had committed no assault, but who had in fact been assaulted by federal agents.
The result of the false claims and the chaos in Minneapolis would soon reverberate inside the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office.
We investigate when it's appropriate to investigate, and that is not the case here.
Tuesday, January 13th, 6 days after the killing of Renee Good, was a pivotal day here at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis. Pushed so hard and so far by the Trump Justice Department to do things that they found unconscionable, even immoral, 5 prosecutors, including 4 top prosecutors, resigned in protest.
6 prosecutors who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women in ICE. So they came, they said, we want to resign. So the breaking news tonight, I fired them all.
Attorney General Bondi goes on Fox and claims that she fired you. What was your response when you heard her say that?
I know what happened, and if it made the Attorney General feel better to say that she had fired us, that was okay with me. I never intended to leave the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was my dream job. It's why I went to law school. It was the greatest professional privilege of my life, but I could no longer stay.
The next evening, January 14th, another shooting.
What we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself.
DoorDash driver Alfredo Alejandro Alhorna fled in his car when he realized he was being followed by ICE agents, returning home where he lived with his cousin. Footage of the incident shows Alhorna being tackled by ICE agent Christian Castro before a brief struggle. When Alhorna and his cousin Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, both in the country illegally, run towards their home, you can see the agent appear to fire his weapon toward the entryway. He hit Sosa Celis, who was not the target of the pursuit. He hit him in the leg. As with the shooting of Renee Good, the video told a different story from what authorities initially claimed. The ICE agent was later charged with 4 counts of second-degree assault and 1 count of falsely reporting a crime. Saturday, January 24th, was 17 days since the death of Renee Good, the culmination of weeks of chaos and cover-ups in Minneapolis.
6 months ago this Friday, a VA intensive care nurse named Alex Preddy was right here on Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis. He'd been protesting the immigration enforcement events, but he was out here as an observer filming. Immigration agents pushed a woman to the ground. He said, "Are you okay?" and helped her up, at which point immigration agents swarmed him. He had a weapon he had a permit for. It was holstered. It was taken from him before any shots were fired, and then at least 10 shots were fired into the body of Alex Preddy right here on the ground. At no point had he been resisting arrest.
When they tried to get him to disengage, he became aggressive and resisted them throughout that process. These officers used their training, followed their protocols, and were in fear of their lives and the people around them.
I was not with the U.S. Attorney's Office when this happened, but the video is shocking, and I would think as an American citizen that there would be a full investigation, and there would be some accountability.
Are you surprised there hasn't been any sort of result?
I wish I could say I'm surprised. I'm certainly dismayed.
The shooting of Alex Preddy was widely seen by prosecutors and former prosecutors as bad, as prosecutable. It was, one former prosecutor told me, an execution, a summary execution. It's that simple, unquote. And yet, local officials were kept from the scene of the shooting by federal officials. And 6 months later, still no charges have been brought against the officers who killed Alex Preddy right here.
My big fear is that we'll be 12 months from the day of the shooting and we'll be right in the same place.
That's Steve Slisher, attorney for Alex Preddy's parents.
This is a family who lost their only son and watched this unfold on TV. Would never contacted by the government to even inform them that this had happened. They haven't been treated with respect or dignity.
How worried are you that we're now in a world where there is no accountability for police officers or any sort of law enforcement or immigration enforcement agent?
I don't think the citizens of this country are going to accept that. We certainly don't accept it. Alex's parents don't accept it. We demand accountability and transparency for Alex's killers.
He loved this country, but he hated what people were doing to it.
While the Trump administration and our nation have largely moved on from these tumultuous 18 days in Minnesota, the Preddy family and the Good family still live every day with their losses. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's immigration enforcement policies continue to be criticized for being overly aggressive to the point of unnecessary state-sanctioned killing. They're criticized for agents lying and for administration cover-ups. As of now, the status of any federal investigation into what happened in Minneapolis with Renee Good and Alex Preddy remains unclear.
CNN reached out to former Border Patrol official Greg Bovino. He disputes the characterization of that January 12th phone call. He says that though he could not recall his exact words, the idea that he would say he would put down protests was not something he would say.
My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant.
Listen, this was a PR stunt. This is consistent with his position on Israel and that whole debacle. It's also consistent with the, as a DSA, person, very strong feelings about Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. And listen, Netanyahu has committed war crimes. He has gone completely off the rails over the years. He's in trouble in Israel. A lot of what's going on here with Donald Trump.
In the United States.
Yes, it's true.
The reason he's saying that in part is that Netanyahu's approval rating is not great here
and
in America.
It's not. And so this is, but at the same time, we can't abandon Israel. They are our ally in the region. It's an important strategic partnership, but there needs to be a reset here with what's going on with Israel. But he knew that he did not have the authority to do this. This was a publicity stunt for him. And so now it's bringing this back into the conversation, because if you look at what's happening in places like Michigan and others, where AIPAC and these conversations about Netanyahu and Israel, that is part of the primary process going on here and part of the internecine warfare with Democrats. Yeah. So I think there was another part of this.
He's talked to Jon Stewart about this. Jon Stewart pressed him about whether or not this was a distraction.
Is there a sense you have that maybe, is that a distraction from all these other things that you want to do? Is that taking a little bit more of the media space than you realized?
Well, I think I have a responsibility to be honest with New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. And when I'm asked a question, to answer it honestly, the focus always has to be on the work that you're doing and how you find a balance between, not giving your kind of a classic, a political deflection where you don't want to answer any of those questions and focusing on the work and still finding that together.
This has been a pathetic 24 hours for the mayor of New York City. He, on that video, was very angry while he conceded every point that his critics have made for the last 10 months, which I guess makes the people he duped feel better. He meekly appeals to international law as though it was a thing that should trump the Constitution as the supreme law of the country. He will be ignored. He said that Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City. He will be ignored. And among the litany of things that he accused Netanyahu of, the elected head of government of Israel, who is supported by the Israeli people. And by the way,
not for long.
You know what? Any other government, including the Blue and White Coalition, would pursue the same strategy that he is pursuing. One of the things Zoran Mamdani accused him of was killing 73,000 Palestinians. Those numbers come from the Gaza Health Ministry, and they include Hamas fighters. So one of two things is true. Either he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he really does know what he's talking about, and what he's doing is apologizing for terrorists with American blood on their hands.
This is an undercount. They haven't even begun to count the people.
So there's more terrorists that we can apologize for.
As an Arab American and a former secretary of the Arab American Caucus of the California Democratic Party, I have to say my community has been desperate for somebody to at least name the horrors that the Palestinian people have endured with the backing of our government.
Affordability would feel made up for me, but President Trump's advisors know, his party knows, as do Democrats, that the vast majority of Americans can't afford to live here. They can't afford childcare, health care, housing. We're talking about a whole generation of folks, millennials and younger, who are living with their parents despite going to school, despite having jobs. And affordability is a crisis that's not manufactured by the Democrats, but it is being exacerbated by the president and his administration.
And this is something Republicans have been talking about for years as well.
Yeah, it is, and it's an American reality. This whole notion of cannibal capitalism that's eating us alive, it's not a myth. It's the norm. And the disconnect, and the mayor knows this, between Wall Street and Main Street is the most fervent it's ever been. And you see the stock market record numbers, and it's just disconnected from the reality and the plight of the average American person. And that's the key dilemma. I like to think about it from the perspective, when we think of old school democratic politics, FDR and the New Deal. He espoused a vision of protecting the American worker and the retiree. And that was a safety net at the back end. And I think the Democrats have to get their act together when they think about a safety net at the front end. What does that look like? The mayor did work with universal basic income. I would think of it more expansively as universal basic vitality, protecting people where they are, not at the beginning of lives only with baby bonds, an idea, good idea from Senator Booker and Republicans too, and not only Social Security at the back end. What about the middle? What about the heart of people's lives?
What about life? What we've noticed is the DOJ is just uninterested in prosecuting any of the men who've been exposed from the records. But we saw an attorney general in New Mexico who is ready to prosecute the crimes at Zorro Ranch, but he can't get the DOJ to cooperate. So what we did is we put in this bill the special ability for the attorney general of New Mexico or any attorney general from any state to get the documents from the DOJ so that they can prosecute the crimes that the DOJ won't.
So is that in a way a fix as you see it to the first bill?
Well, we didn't anticipate that the Department of Justice wouldn't release the files and wouldn't investigate or prosecute. So now we need to empower state attorney generals. But one reason I was thinking, why did this break through? Why is this broken through for over a year? And my view is it's about integrity. It's about character. These people in this country want moral renewal. They see the corruption, and then they're seeing this group of rich and powerful people abusing, raping, trafficking young girls and getting away with it. And they say, what's happened to our country? And they sided with these survivors who were enormously courageous, and they appreciated that two people could come across the aisle to build a coalition to actually stand up for American values.
How do you see, right now there's multiple court cases, right, that are moving about whether it's redactions or it's about getting more documents to be released. How do you see that effort working alongside this one of yours?
Well, that's another thing we did with this bill. We made it easier to get in front of a court. Survivors, they can go to their U.S. district courts and bring cases against the DOJ if they don't release the documents to the survivors, which they're supposed to be doing. And even members of Congress now, we can go to the court and litigate this because there are clear examples that where the DOJ is still withholding files or overly redacting things beyond what the Epstein Files Transparency Act allows. And just getting in front of a judge is so hard to have standing. So that's another thing that we added to this bill.
So Todd Blanche, who is very much hoping to be confirmed as Attorney General, he's the acting AG, said that releasing more materials would actually harm Epstein victims and the government, and he's offered to share additional material behind closed doors with a judge. Why isn't that enough?
Who are you going to believe, Todd Blanche or the survivors themselves? He refused to meet with the survivors or survivors' lawyers. And actually, a federal judge has ruled. Katie Fang brought a lawsuit under the original Epstein Transparency Act, and the judge has ruled that Todd Blanche needs to release the remaining files. And he has been in defiance of already a federal judge's order. But the absurdity here is every other nation is prosecuting people, former prime ministers, former princes, former ambassadors. Only here in the United States of America are we not having any investigation or prosecution.
first round, get your go-to. Second, have what she's having.
An Olive Garden diner asks online if his whole family can share his never-ending pasta pass, which is good for months. The restaurant chain says no, it's only for use by the pass holder, who must present a valid photo ID. And that prompts White House advisor Stephen Miller to serve up some piping hot politics.
We've reached the point as a society where access to fettuccine at Olive Garden is vastly more secure than deciding who is commander-in-chief of the country.
Some Republicans have bellied up to that table fast, asking their fellow lawmakers to pass the Save America Act, please.
We're protecting our breadsticks more than our ballots in jurisdictions across this country.
They've been pushing the measure for months to put strict new ID requirements on anyone trying to vote.
The only reason you can be against that is if you want voter fraud.
It's a main course for President Donald Trump, who implied he simply overpowered election fraud when he won in 2016.
Folks, the system is rigged.
That he was cheated when he lost in 2020.
It was a rigged election.
And even now, back in office, he relentlessly claims corruption is common when Americans go to the polls.
This cannot be allowed to continue.
The fly in the sauce? It's not true. Courts, election experts, and researchers have found time and again that voter fraud at any level is exceedingly rare and almost never decides the outcome of any election. Still, the GOP keeps dishing distrust on the issue.
Olive Garden takes pasta pass security more seriously than Democrats are taking election security.
Even as many Democrats say, the Save America Act could discourage legal voters by stoking fears and raising onerous requirements, such as proving citizenship or making a married woman prove she changed her name long ago, not for pasta, but for a constitutional right.
I'm actually married to a coworker that I met on a political campaign.
Fair.
So
on a political campaign, that's true. Many couples that are like that.
Yeah, no. But I think whatever the creepiness factor is, that should be your guide. If it feels creepy, walk away.
That's right. But and yet, right now, the number of people investigated for sexual misconduct in Congress. Eric Swalwell, 2026, right? Misconduct included with a staffer. Tony Gonzalez, sexual relationship with a staffer, one that reportedly ended with her mental health problems. And then Corey Mills, currently still there, sexual misconduct and partner violence. The famous Matt Gaetz in Florida, he of Venmo. And then George Santos, who we all know is somebody perhaps with campaign finance issues. He actually was dealing with a complaint about sexual harassment of a staffer. Are the vibes bad?
I have a theory on this. I think a lot of the people who are elected in Congress are becoming cool for the first time in their lives. They basically come from maybe small towns across the country. Maybe you owned like a car dealership or something like that. And then boom, you become this star, you get a social media following, and everyone has in their own mind what it means to be cool. And for some people, that's like taking photos with celebrities. We see politicians do that. Some people, it's going on cable news and having like a big opinion. And for some people, it's women. Yeah. And I think they like to use their power to take advantage of maybe staffers or people who work on the Hill. And that's why people feel uncomfortable, like that woman said about sending their daughter here.
I think that is a really good point. People can get high on their own supply. If you think back to someone like Anthony Weiner, what you're saying is exactly follows. Someone who gets big on the internet, someone who starts to kind of believe their own press about who they are and the ego that follows. I think the question that people are worried about, and Alex, maybe you can talk about this, is that's veered into abuse. And that's veered into real problems politically. Like Graham Plattner, whatever people are saying about those allegations, again, it's the person's relationships with women that are haunting them in the public policy space.
Well, and to add to the point, we've all been around the Hill where some of those guys, they get their chest puffed out with their Congress pin on, and they're getting they're being flirted with by all these staffers. Sometimes it's just like the handsome male staffers.
Because we should be clear, there are consensual relationships.
Yes.
Like what Mike said, it's not that unusual at all. Plenty of people have met their spouses probably because they never leave the office.
On this West Bank hilltop, a battle over the past will shape the future. And archaeology is the weapon of choice.
So this is the line right here. Yeah, exactly. The first line of these columns, it's in Area C, where it's Area C started.
And so what does that mean for Palestinians in this area?
It means that we are losing our heart by losing this area and not having access to our agricultural fields and our archaeological sites.
Sebastia is an archaeological treasure, home to thousands of years of Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman history. It is now enmeshed in the fabric and economy of the Palestinian town of the same name, but risks being cut off from it.
If we look to the examples we had it already, maybe they will build a wall. Who knows?
It is also home to ruins from the ancient kingdom of Israel.
Archaeologists say these ruins date back to the 9th century BC, part of the capital city of the ancient kingdom of Israel. And now the current Israeli government wants to use these ruins as a justification for seizing hundreds of acres of land on an archaeological site that includes ruins from many other periods in history.
The goal, an Israeli tourist site with a focus on its Jewish heritage. The man behind that project is far-right heritage minister Amichai Eliyahu, who has, among other things, said he would be open to nuking Gaza. He says Palestinians have failed to preserve the site and protect it from looters.
In order to protect this site, why is it necessary to expropriate privately held Palestinian lands?
השטח הוא שטח ישראלי. זה שייך לעם היהודי. זה לא כבוש. לא מוכן שיהרסו, יחבלו, ישדדו, יפרקו או ימחקו.
But Palestinians say it's Israel standing in the way of efforts to rehabilitate these ruins.
We tried to do rehabilitation, urgent and emergency rehabilitation. During the work, settlers, soldiers came, they stopped all the labors.
So they keep on repeating this argument that the Palestinians are destroying archaeological remains, but they have not shown any data to support it.
Alon Arad leads a group of Israeli archaeologists fighting against what they say are the real intentions of this government and Eliyahu.
He doesn't care about antiques. He wants to annex. It's not about the site. It's the ability to use the site as a weapon, as an instrument to take more land, to shrink this Palestinian space.
The Palestinian Authority, supported by archaeologists like Arad, has filed an emergency petition to designate Sebastia as a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
אונסקו יכול לדבר מה שהוא רוצה, אם הוא ינסה ללכת לא עם האמת ולהמציא פה נרטיבים, הוא לא יצליח.
It seems like ultimately you are trying to strengthen Israel's position on the ground in that territory.
השטח הוא בלתי הפיך. העובדות הן בלתי הפיכות. מה אתה מציע, שאני אתן להם למחוק את המורשת שלנו? העובדות הן שזו הייתה אדמת אבותינו ואימותינו.
Palestinians are also deeply rooted in this land, like the olive trees Sebastia's families have cultivated amid the ruins for generations.
This is everything for us. I cannot imagine Sebastia without the archaeological site. It's like your children, you cannot leave one of them. This is the heart of people of Sebastia and Sebastia at the same time.
I have 2 biologists in my custody right now. I've tried to make contact with the FBI through the law enforcement agent that is in the ranger station here in Shasta. I'm requesting FBI investigator to speak to so that I can release these hostages. Over. Your best to send somebody up, unarmed, talk to me from that camper. I can hear you, and then we can go from there and try to make further contact. Over. Tell me what's your name? Who am I talking with? Who are you talking with? Come on, guy.
It was a scary situation, very dynamic. We didn't know what was going to happen, what to expect. We did our best to maintain control of the scene. And we began negotiations at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it didn't conclude until around 2:40 in the morning. And I could tell you a little bit about what was going on, and a lot of it was waiting. Joseph, who we were primarily in contact with, didn't give us a lot. He said he wanted to speak to the FBI. We had the FBI there, but he didn't say really what he wanted. And that made us very nervous for the safety of the 2 people that were hostages inside the trailer.
So he didn't really make particular demands here. And it sounds like there was a bit of a lack of clarity about the motive that he had. Is that right?
Yeah, even to this day, I still don't know what the motive was. He just indicated that he wanted to talk to the FBI. And that's really all that we got out of the conversations with him. The call originally came in at about 11 a.m. that morning, and we responded. We were in the area about noon, and we immediately launched our drones in the area, which I have to say, for anyone that's listening, drones are incredibly helpful. And it kept us a distance away from that trailer because we knew that he was armed. And because of those drones, we were able to get sort of a preview of what to expect later on.
Yeah, we're seeing just how remote this area is. We saw some footage of some of the officers there. This is a 2,000 feet up in rough terrain in the Shasta Trinity National Forest. What were the difficulties just kind of getting in there?
Yeah, as you're seeing, I mean, that campground is about 16 miles from Mount Shasta City, and the road is very narrow. It's really hard to get multiple vehicles, through that area. So we had to basically stack up vehicles along that road in order to make our way in. And so even at the campground, it's very small. There's no areas to turn around. So we had to be really decisive and make sure that when we went in, that we were doing it safely and that we had hopefully time on our side.
We already know for sure where 4 of these justices stand on this exact kind of law, where we have 4 that have said they don't think it's constitutional under the Second Amendment. So really the only question is whether they can get a 5th on their side. And as you just mentioned there, a lot of the rulings that we've seen from the Supreme Court on Second Amendment issues, the conservatives have all gone in the same direction.
Right.
The majority of the majority's all been in the same place on all of these rulings. So you also have an expert consensus from people across the ideological spectrum who study the Second Amendment closely. We did a piece of the Reload where we asked half a dozen of them, and they all came essentially the same conclusion as well, that the Supreme Court is likely to strike down these laws. I mean, certainly ARs have been used in some high-profile mass shootings, but even if you're just cordoning off to mass shootings, the CNN uses the Gun Violence Archive for its tracker, and most of those shootings involve handguns. And then, yeah, just generally as far as murder statistics go, handguns are also more common there. And they've, as what we just mentioned, the court has already said that handguns can't be restricted for that reason, just for the general fact that they're used in crimes. So it's unlikely the Supreme Court is going to come down and say you can restrict AR-15s for a similar reason.
One of the things these models decided is in order to achieve the objective, it needed to break out of its sandbox, hack this other company, and evaluate its cybersecurity benchmark on it.
I mean, is that a good thing? Should we be worried?
I mean, I absolutely believe that we should be aware that these models can absolutely do that. Safety and stress testing is something that they did a lot during the prior administration. This administration, obviously, in the beginning, David Sachs, the crypto czar, said, we're not doing, safety, we're not doing it as much as we're doing forward progress and innovation. However, even the Trump administration is seeing right now that safety, especially with the Mythos, Fable 5, recent sort of dust up in which Anthropic kind of came up against the administration with their cybersecurity model, Even the Trump administration now is seeing these types of safety testing is necessary, and reporting on it is giving us more information.
And what you're talking about is that Anthropic was basically stopped by the administration for a short period of time because there were national security fears about their model, and now it is back up. Meanwhile, in the AI world, Elon Musk, once again making headlines, he is taking on Christopher Nolan in the #1 movie at the box office, The Odyssey, and suggesting that Grok, his AI property, could make a better version of this movie. Can that actually happen?
Yeah, Alex, I've been reading about this online, and I'll just say I saw The Odyssey. It's a wonderful movie. Really enjoyed it. Look, the most advanced open source models to generate video imagery and moving kind of cinematography right now are actually coming from China. Seedance was the big model that everyone kind of remembers, where it had Tom Cruise kind of fighting Brad Pitt in those sort of very hyper-realistic videos. The problem with that is they're only 30 seconds long. They're 30 seconds, max 60 seconds. The highest capacity models that exist right now can't generate a Christopher Nolan Odyssey video. We're very far away, and Grok is even further behind some of these Seedance, models and things that are open source from China. Could it be, if Musk combined all of his companies together and did a whole of company effort, could he make some advancements in doing this? Yes. Could he generate the Odyssey by the end of the year? I'd be very surprised.
President Trump puts a new condition on his controversial nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia. So, where does the agreement go from here? Plus, angry protests erupt in Wisconsin after a man is fatally shot by police. Details on the state's investigation coming your way. And a semi-truck rips down power lines, causing mayhem and sending sparks flying. We've got the full story there. And contraband, kitty! This feline was caught trying to smuggle drugs into a Russian prison. Details on how the perpetrator was apprehended. It is Thursday, July 23rd. I'm Brad Smith. This is CNN Headline Express. Glad that you're with us today. Let's get this started. Protests break out in Wisconsin after a man is shot and killed by police in the state capitol. Witness video, it actually shows an officer firing multiple shots. And a warning here, the video that you're about to see is disturbing. We have paused it at the moment that gunfire is heard.
Holy
CNN's Whitney Wild has a look at the moments leading up to the fatal shooting that you heard.
According to police, this started Wednesday afternoon when police got a report of a man checking parked vehicles. When those officers contacted that man, he took off on his bicycle through some backyards. They caught up with him later, and that's when they say a struggle started. As you see in that video, you do hear an officer at some point during the struggle yelling, "Taser, taser, taser." Also happening during this struggle, according to video, there's an officer who yells he's got a knife. Law enforcement says an officer was injured by that knife. It is the same officer who then opens fire during that struggle. There is no body camera here. The department says that they don't have a broad policy for deploying body-worn camera. What we know right now is that those officers are on administrative leave. The Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation is investigating. Finally, law enforcement says that there was a second officer who was injured in that incident, but it's not clear how